This is Steve Belcher with Pacifica, and I'm with Christopher Geary, who is a PhD student at Berkeley. And he recently spoke on the campus of Berkeley at Sproul Plaza about the connection between the struggle of the striking UC UAW workers and the railroad workers, and said that those struggles are really connected. Welcome to our show.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'm really happy to be here.
So, Chris, why don't you talk about this strike? It's been going on now 4 weeks, one of the longest strikes of education workers in California, and 48,000. It's a group of workers who say that they don't have living wages, yet they're public workers. They work for University of California, and they're facing an existential crisis as far as housing. So maybe you can talk about what the conditions are that led to this mass strike of 48,000.
And I think the first thing I would just emphasize is how big and how historic our strike is. 48,000 workers across 3 different unions all came together to go out on strike on November 14th. And we're still out here, still fighting for living wages. We've been demanding that the University of California pay us enough to live where we work. That it meaningfully address how rent burdened grad workers and postdocs and academic researchers are at every single UC campus. A vast majority pay more than 30% of their take-home pay each month to their landlord, a landlord who is often the University of California itself. As still a majority, I think about 55%, pay more than half of their paycheck. And so going into the strike, our campaign has really been, oriented around the cost of living crisis that everyone in California is suffering and everyone in California knows about. We've also been demanding equity for international students. I'm an international student myself. I'm here on a visa. I'm from Ireland. And the University of California charges international students up to $15,000 a year in extra fees. So it's basically a tax on people from, non-California residents and non-citizens to work at the university. It's a gross inequity, and it's something that we're trying to get abolished. We have some other core demands that are built around equity and justice, particularly for student parents. The university pays student parents a pittance, basically. It doesn't even cover a couple of weeks even at a University of California operated childcare facility. We're demanding that the UC give student parents enough money to actually pay for UC operated and offered childcare. Those are some of our core demands. We have been this is week 4 of our strike right now. And so far, the University of California is still not taking us seriously. They are still not offering anything adequately enough. They've been, pulling a lot of illegal stuff at the bargaining table, refusing to share information. We've been filing, unfair labor practice after unfair labor practice.
And this is a state institution chartered by the state of California. And I understand that from what you're saying, they're flagrantly violating labor law. But the Attorney General, apparently, of California, Rob Bonta, what are they doing about the fact that a state public institution is flagrantly violating labor law? And I understand they're spending maybe millions on lawyers to fight the union. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, they have some very nasty and well-paid attack dog labor lawyers who've been stonewalling our bargaining teams for certainly the past couple of weeks and the months leading up to that. I think at the end of the day, they are the boss, and they're going to try to squeeze us as much as they can. Obviously, that's a disgrace for a public institution, for an institution whose mission is to educate the people of California, to provide them a quality education. And providing a quality education, a world-class education, in fact, means paying teachers and researchers enough to do that high-quality educating. And it's a travesty, frankly, that the university is prioritizing its bottom line over the welfare of its workers.
Well, the question one has to ask is, this institution gets money from the state of California. It's under the supervision, really, of the California legislature. Top officials of the Democratic Party, Gavin Newsom is on the Board of Regents, Lieutenant Governor, the head of the Assembly, and Tony Thurman, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, are all on the Board of Regents. Have they spoken out? Have they supported you? Have they demanded that the regions stop union busting and provide you a living wage and housing?
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you think? Absolutely not. And again, like, they should be ashamed. And now is the time for them to change that. Now is the time for them to support the workers at the University of California who are trying to keep this institution the best public university in the world and to try to make it even better. Yeah. At the same time, I think it would be important to recognize that the University of California has been, getting its, state support continually slashed and eroded for decades now. There has been this sort of large movement of privatization, the prioritization of large construction projects and like growing the endowment. And I think as part of that, there has been sort of an abandonment of the mission of higher education, of public education. And I think, as part of that privatization, that neoliberalization, and that erosion of the sense of the institution as a public institution, as the people's institution, that's created space for some of the really toxic union busting and strike busting that we're seeing.
And the regents are appointed by the governor of California, Jerry Brown previously, and now Gavin Newsom. Most of them are multimillionaires. Richard Blum, who was the husband of Dianne Feinstein, was involved in shifting money from the employee pension money to a hedge fund that he was running. It seems like there's corruption, collusion, and that these regents really are not representing the people of California. Are there any labor people on the board? I mean, it seems like this board of regents who are running the university really are part of the problem of privatization that you're talking about.
I think so, and I mean, I do hope that we do have allies among the regents, that we do have allies in campus administration. But to be frank, like right now, our struggle is to like sort of organize ourselves to insist on dignified living conditions and working conditions. We're in this for the long haul. We're getting ready. Finals week is already starting at the quarter system campuses. It's starting next week at UC Berkeley. We're getting ready to withhold grades. We're critical deadlines for research grants are also coming our way. Whether or not we have allies on the Board of Regents, whether or not, politicians in Sacramento, wake up and find a spine or a sense of honor and self-respect, we're getting ready, and we have the power as workers to see this through and to win what we need.
A lot of the language of the Democrats in California is that they're in favor of a living wage and they believe in the living wage. But right here, you have not private employees, but public employees who don't have a living wage. And one of your demands is a COLA, cost of living adjustment, and not just University of California employees, but all working people in California are faced with rapid inflation. Social Security recipients just received over 7% increase in their payments as a result of inflation. What you're asking for, it seems like a necessity for you, not just you, but all workers in California nationally.
Absolutely. And I think everyone in California knows how crazy inflation has been. Everyone across the US, even the world,
internationally,
how much the cost of rent, of gas, of housing has been skyrocketing, and how our wages have not been keeping pace. The University of California, for instance, came into this strike offering us what was in fact a real terms like wages cut to my union, UAW 2865. They kept reiterating that offer week after week of the strike. It was, absolutely shameless, with, no respect or awareness of the fact of like how much people are suffering, how much people are hurting. And I would say this one thing. I think you're absolutely right that everyone in California needs a cost of living adjustment. Everyone in California needs to be making more money so that they can afford to live here. And this is why I'm also so committed and so hopeful about our strike, because it's not just for academic workers at the University of California. It's for workers in the higher ed sector across the country, across the world, and it's for workers in other sectors in California and in the United States. This is the biggest strike in the US since 2019. This is the biggest strike in higher ed in American history. If we can win this, we're going to win for everyone, and we're going to make California and we're going to make the US a better place.
And we're speaking with Christopher Geary, who is a PhD student at the University of California, Berkeley. And he spoke at a rally on the campus, Sproul Hall, in solidarity with the railroad workers, who also have been facing an attack, not just by Warren Buffett and the billionaire owners of the railroads, but also by the U.S. Congress, President Biden, who ordered them to go back to work without sick pay. What do you think about that whole idea of ordering workers to take a contract that doesn't include sick pay?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely disgusting, especially coming from quote unquote Amtrak Joe. This really flagrant, strike busting. I spoke with some rail workers yesterday at our solidarity rally, and like, their demands, that they aren't even that radical. They just need like some paid sick days, and like so they can actually take a break, so they can actually go home to their family, so they can actually go back onto the job and it be safe, because they're not working these like crazy shifts and being on call like every single day. The freight companies, they've been cutting positions, they've been cutting hours for years and getting away with massive profits on the back of fewer and fewer and more overworked workers. And to see the political establishment collude with these robber baron railway companies is disgusting. But I also have a lot of faith in the railway workers that they're not going to take this kind of slap in the face lying down. I believe firmly in the power of the workers to transform their living conditions, no matter what Joe Biden says.
And there's been a rise of strikes, protests. The Columbia workers went on strike and were successful. They had assemblies there and organizing the strike. The New School UAW workers, this fact that 80,000 graduate students are now in the UAW getting strike payments while being on strike is a new development. Do you see a rising movement in the United States, working class movement? There hasn't been a working class movement in the United States since the 1930s and 1940s, when there was the last general strike was in Oakland, actually, in 1946. But it seems that more and more workers are fed up and they're being pushed against the wall for survival, and they have to fight whether they want to or not.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, with the pandemic and with, the sort of cost of living crisis with inflation, which is also, a crisis of employers depressing wages, to be frank, and landlords gouging tenants. I think this is leading to new levels of militancy and mobilization, and I think and I hope that our strike is contributing to what will be a tsunami of working class mobilization and fighting back to build power, to take power, and to transform what it means to work and to live in this country and in other countries as well.
And your union is not the only one without a contract. The ILW, West Coast Longshore workers, are without a contract. They've been negotiating since July. And they were also told, don't go on strike before the elections. We don't want to have a strike during the elections that would affect the Democratic Party campaign. It seems like the relationship of the unions to the Democratic Party is actually harmful as far as fighting for worker rights.
Yeah, I mean, that may be the case. And I do, personally think, focusing too much on allies in office can be misdirected energy, because our fight is always, how can we convince our coworkers to stay one more day on the line, one more week on the picket line? How can we convince them to talk to more people, to feel more confident, to feel more hope? hope is power. And we build it, by like talking to our coworkers, and building a sense of confidence that we can actually win what we need, that we deserve that what we need. So first, with respect to the sort of UAW International, I was so delighted to see the reform slate do so well, and I really hope that, especially in the runoffs that are coming, that we do some real cleaning of house, because the corruption scandals at the sort of highest levels of our union, we're demoralizing, we're demobilizing, but these victories for the anti-corruption slate, a slate that it really cares about and will promote internal democracy, that's a ray of hope for me and for a lot of my coworkers. In terms of our union and in promoting union democracy, it's been great, and like the strike itself has pulled in so many more people into organizing, into thinking critically about what we're doing, about what the union is, what it can be, what the strike is, what it should look like. And I think, this level of mobilization, this intensity of our struggle is the sort of lifeblood of union democracy. So I'm so hopeful to see our unions, UAW 2865, which is teachers, TAs, SRU, which is student researchers, newly formed in the lead up to this strike, and also 5810, which is postdocs. Every single one of these unions has been so energized and so democratized by this fight. And I think if we can bring and sort of promote and spread this kind of struggle, that is what is going to re-energize and save the labor movement.
And at the rally yesterday, you brought up the struggles not just in the United States, but in Britain, where there's movement of the postal workers, others against privatization. There may be a general strike. You're, of course, Ireland, where you come from, James Connolly, and the struggle of the Irish working class has a tremendous history. This history of the working class, workers' struggles all over the world, it seems, especially with communication technology, Zoom and others, that workers now are able to communicate internationally and learn the lessons. And even in your strike, I understand your bargaining sessions have been on Zoom. There's been debates, there have been discussions where everyone can hear directly what is going on. It seems like that's a new development taking place in the working class now with communication technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, like having virtual bargaining sessions, for instance, or like discussion spaces, means that we can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come to these, and that's also an accessibility thing. So there are so many hundreds of workers at the University of California who aren't able to go to the union hall for like a last minute meeting, whether they're immunocompromised or they have mobility issues, student parents, if they can't get childcare because the UC doesn't pay us enough to afford childcare. So digital technology has been key for bringing in more people for this kind of democratization, which has been really powerful and empowering. At the sort of larger level of like coordinating and learning from different struggles in different parts of the country and in different countries. Like, for instance, we've learned so much from the Columbia student workers. They've been incredible mentors to us going into this fight, and like as it's prolonged, sharing tactics, sharing messages of support. We've also been in touch with so many other unions, like the New School, for instance, as well as like non-higher ed unions, like the rail workers, and also ILWU. But that's in the works.
And it seems that this COLA demand that you're raising, actually, if it's spread to other unions, SEIU, there are a large number of other unions, that kind of united front for a COLA could really expand nationally and internationally. All workers are facing inflation. There's similar kind of issues. And one of the other issues is that the composition of the strike. I interviewed some of the workers in Sacramento. Most of them have never been in a union, certainly not on strike. So this is kind of a very new experience of struggle in the class struggle, but actually new to the class struggle.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We all know, and we have lived through decade after decade of neoliberalization, of austerity, of precaritization. And when we think too about who is going to grad school, there is this sort of, perhaps there's this image in the public's mind that it's, all of these sort of bougie, rich white kids who are, they come from their liberal arts college and then they're, getting a master's degree or a PhD and, so-and-so studies. But, as important as so-and-so studies is, the actual composition of graduate labor is increasingly, precaritized workers who are looking for some kind of stable employment. And we're coming to grad school so often with less and less and increasingly no prospect of career advancement within this sector. Our status as workers, our status as underpaid workers is increasingly clear to so many of us. We enter this system, often like we've been working in Starbucks or we've been, driving for Uber or something like that. And we come into this system and we're still being ground down, still being deprived of dignity. But, we're being told constantly by the university, by our mentors, by faculty, oh, you got to take your lumps, you got to serve your time, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a brand new spanking shiny job, where this 10-year track, and you'll be set for life. And we all know in our heart of hearts that's not the case. And that's why I think so many of us are fed up, and we're insisting that no, we need to get paid enough to live now.
So that's a basic challenge, really, to the whole gig economy preparedness that workers face. You're saying you're going to be paid a living wage, and you're not going to be waiting until some pie in the sky in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I'm in the English department here doing a PhD, and the job market for English PhDs is brutal. Like, there are so few openings each year. There's thousands and thousands of applicants to any single job opening. And so many of us, we are the best in the world. We are so highly trained. We are amazing teachers. Well, not to like toot my own horn. The others are amazing teachers.
Chris is an amazing teacher.
That's my
I believe it. So this really recognition of the reality of your circumstances, and not just you, but many, many, many the graduates, as many of the strikers, they have to make their future now, really, not wait sometime in the future for the far, which they may or may not get a job in the profession. It must be a very stressful situation to be in that kind of precarious position.
It is. And I mean, that's why there's been so much anger bubbling up. There's been so much, readiness and militancy, laying the groundwork for this humongous strike, for this moment where we can actually, force the university to treat us as workers and to treat us with dignity, to pay us enough to live where we work, to pay us enough to live where they recruit us from all over the country and from all around the world, to do this kind of labor.
And the university does have a lot of wealth, funds, capital funds. I mean, also the amount of money that the university spends into police. There was an incident at the University of California, Davis, where the police maced the students who were having a peaceful sit-in. It seems like the priorities of the university and the regents are contrary, and you've discussed this earlier, to what the real needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. Their priorities, and this is again part of the sort of long-term privatization of this public institution. But yeah, the priority is big building projects, shiny new things that they can put on the flyers and recruit business students or what have you. It's growing the endowment. It's funneling money from teaching faculty and graduate students to the upper levels of the administration. There's so much like upper management bloat, and like the growth of the metastasization, I should say, maybe, of that sector of university administration is also like, they're the ones who have been, refusing to bargain with us. They're the ones who've been trying to break the strike. They're the ones who've been trying to union bust. They're the ones who are insisting that we don't deserve enough money to live here, that we don't deserve childcare, that we don't deserve adequate health care. This sort of prioritization and financialization of the University of California. Again, I've used this word already, but it's a travesty. But it's something that we're fighting to reverse.
And Berkeley has a long history of struggle, including the fight to protect People's Park. And now apparently the university wants to develop it, supposedly for housing, but a lot of that may be market rate housing. They're going to take a green space, and there's a fight against that. The issue of the apartments that the university itself owns, they say that they're interested in housing for students, but it seems like they're supporting gentrification and market rate housing, which is not helping out the UC students or the community.
No, but it is helping out the University of California's endowment, and that's what it's really all about. Yeah, I mean, it's a disgrace. The University of California has been at Berkeley has been trying to redevelop People's Park for a long time, basically since it was liberated as a public space back in the 60s and 70s. It is prime real estate and they are too greedy to let it go undeveloped, and so they have been horrendous to a lot of the unhoused inhabitants of People's Park. They've treated the community, the city of Berkeley, and also of the University of California at Berkeley with complete disregard and disrespect. No one wants a huge tower block of market rate apartments in downtown Berkeley, because that is going to skyrocket everyone's rents. And this is the other thing too, and this has been a consistent sort of theme and demand for our campaign as we're trying to address how rent burdened we are, to address the cost of living and force the university to address our cost of living. The University of California is one of, if not the biggest landlords in the state of California. If they in a large part, they set the rents in the localities of their campuses. At other campuses beyond UC Berkeley, a majority of academic workers are living in UC operated housing. We're paying hand over fist back to our employer. A lot of these campuses are effectively company towns, and it's a disgrace. And to see them, bulldoze and brutalize this historic part of downtown Berkeley in the interest of addressing the housing crisis is frankly disgusting, because it's only going to make it worse, at the same time as destroying a really vulnerable community and hiking everyone's rent.
And the other issue is the ability of working class students, particularly in California, to go to the University of California. It used to be that registration was free. It was free for students. The California Master Plan said that students in California should not have to pay for public education. In Europe, students are even paid to go to college. I mean, that may be something strange to Americans, but in Europe, there's for many public students, school students, you're paid to go to college. Has the union discussed taking up the demand of free admission? I mean, there are over 180 billionaires in California. It seems like the massive wealth in California could and should mean that public education be free for young people in California. And that might engage the undergrads to say, look, this is our fight as well. I mean, this whole issue of why should you go into debt to go to public schools?
Unfortunately, that hasn't been a consistent theme, and it hasn't been a demand in our current struggle. But we do hope, and I would add, there are a lot of undergrads in our union who are out on strike with us. The university does employ a lot of them as GSIs, readers, tutors, researchers. So a lot of undergrads do stand to materially gain from our strike. But I think the larger picture is that if we can win this, if we can really transform what it means to study at the University of California, if we can make the University of California meaningfully address our living conditions and the cost of living, I think there will be immediate impacts for the undergraduate community at large, or high school students at in the state of California who are going to be entering this public institution. But it also sets the stage for new struggles, for new fights, for new mobilizations around new demands. If we can force the university to live up a bit more to its mission as a public institution, we open the door to so much more. We open the door to new struggles that bring in, undergraduate students, high school students, parents, everyday people who just want to, take a class or get a bit more education. Like, this should be for everyone. And at the end of the day, we still are fighting for everyone, but the fight is going to have to continue in terms of making the University of California truly a free and public institution for the people.
I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Christopher Geary. He is a PhD student at University of California in Berkeley, and he's a member of UAW 2865. And he spoke at a rally yesterday at Sproul Plaza, UC Berkeley, about the need to connect the struggle of the UC workers with the railroad workers and their conditions. So thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks so much, Steve.